Close your eyes and breathe in. That scent, sweet, floral, and deeply comforting, is the most recognizable aroma on the planet. You find it in your morning latte, your favorite candle, and the birthday cakes of your childhood. In the modern world, vanilla has become a synonym for the ordinary. It is the default setting. It is plain. It is safe. But you have been lied to. There is nothing plain about vanilla. For centuries, this slender bean was a secret guarded by jungle mists and ancient empires. It was an exotic treasure that defied the greatest botanists of Europe, a commodity that fueled the greed of kings, and a biological mystery that was finally solved by a 12-year-old boy in chains. This isn't the history of a flavouring. This is a story of kidnapping, botanical espionage, and a 300-year-old monopoly. To understand the true price of that scent, you must leave the fluorescent lights of the grocery store behind. You must travel back through the salt spray of the Atlantic and the fever dreams of the conquistadors until the air grows heavy with heat and the sound of the rainforest begins to hum in your ears. It is the 15th century. You're walking through the dense emerald canopy of the Papantla region in what we now call Mexico. The ground is damp beneath your feet and the humidity clings to your skin like a second layer of clothing. Here, the Totonac people are the masters of the earth. They call this vine the Tlilxochitl, the black flower. You watch as a Totonac harvester moves with practiced grace through the vines. This is not a simple crop. The vanilla orchid is a fickle, climbing creature. It winds its way up the trunks of trees, reaching for the sun, but it only blooms for a single day each year. If you aren't there in the few hours between dawn and noon to witness its pale yellow-green flower open, the opportunity is lost. For the Totonacs, vanilla is sacred. It is a gift from the gods, born, according to their legends, from the blood of a forbidden princess and her lover who were beheaded in the forest. You see them gather the green, scentless pods. At this stage, they smell of nothing. The magic only happens through a grueling process of curing, sweating the beans under blankets, drying them in the sun, and aging them until they shrivel into dark, oily batons frosted with white vanillin crystals. But the Totonacs are not alone in their admiration. From the high plateaus to the west, a shadow is falling over the jungle. The Aztec Empire is expanding, and they have developed a taste for tribute. You see the Aztec warriors arrive demanding the black flower as tax. They carry it back to their magnificent capital, Tenochtitlan, where the Emperor Montezuma awaits. Imagine you are standing in the great halls of the Aztec palace. You watch as servants whisk together ground cacao, chili peppers, honey, and the ground pods of the vanilla vine. They call it zocolatl. It is a frothy, bitter, and intoxicating drink reserved for the elite, the warriors, and the gods. To the Aztecs, vanilla is the essential companion to chocolate. It is the scent of power. Then, in 1519, the world breaks. You're on the shores of the Gulf of Mexico when the floating mountains appear. Hernán Cortés and his Spanish conquistadors march inland with steel and horses. They dismantle the Aztec Empire, but among the gold and jewels they plunder, they find something more subtle. They taste the emperor's chocolate. They smell the sweet, mysterious musk of the black bean. As the Spanish galleons begin their long, treacherous journey back across the Atlantic, the secret of vanilla is tucked away in their holds. When it arrives in the courts of Europe, it causes a sensation. You see the aristocrats of Spain, France, and England falling under its spell. Queen Elizabeth I of England becomes obsessed with vanilla-flavoured sweetmeats. To the European elite, vanilla is the ultimate status symbol, rarer than silver, more elusive than silk. But here, the story takes a dark and frustrating turn for the empires of Europe. For 300 years, the Spanish hold a global monopoly. They want vanilla, and they want to grow it in their own colonies, in Madagascar, in Reunion, in the Philippines. You watch as the greatest scientist of the Enlightenment take the vines from Mexico and plant them in the most lush, beautiful botanical gardens in the world. The vines grow, they climb, they produce beautiful green leaves and even the occasional flower. But they never produce a single bean. For 3 centuries, vanilla refuses to grow anywhere except its narrow home in Mexico. It is as if the plant itself is loyal to the soil of the Totonacs. The Europeans are baffled. They try every trick of 18th century science. They study the soil, the water, the temperature. Nothing works. The Spanish secret remains unbroken, and the price of vanilla remains high enough to bankrupt a minor lord. You're now in the early 1800s. Standing in a greenhouse in Paris or London, you see botanists peering through magnifying glasses at the vanilla orchid. They don't realize what you can see, that the flower's anatomy is a fortress. A small flap of tissue, the rostellum, sits like a locked gate between the male and female parts of the plant. In Mexico, a tiny, specialized stingless bee called the melipona knows the secret of how to enter that gate. Without that specific bee, the vanilla orchid is a sterile beauty. The world's appetite for vanilla is screaming, but the supply is a tiny trickle from the Mexican jungles. The botanical mystery seems unsolvable. Then, the scene shifts. You're on the Ile de la Réunion, a volcanic speck of land in the Indian Ocean in the year 1841. This is a French colony built on the back of the slave trade. The air is thick with the scent of tropical fruit and the misery of forced labour. You see a 12-year-old boy named Edmond. He is an enslaved orphan, working on the plantation of a man named Ferréol Bellier Beaumont. Edmond has no formal education. He cannot read or write, but he has spent his short life watching the plants. He has a touch for the earth that the learned professors in Paris could never hope to possess. One morning, Edmond leads his master to a vanilla vine. With a steady hand and a sharpened sliver of bamboo, he demonstrates a miracle. He gently lifts the tiny flap of the flower and, with a delicate squeeze of his thumb, he marries the pollen to the stigma. He has done what nature and science couldn't. He has manually pollinated the vanilla orchid. You watch as the news spreads like wildfire. Within years, the method of the hand of Edmond transforms the global economy. Suddenly vanilla can be grown anywhere with a tropical climate. The French colonies, particularly Madagascar, begin to churn out thousands of tons of beans. The Mexican monopoly is shattered. But look closely at Edmond. Does he become a merchant prince? Does he die wealthy and celebrated? No. He is eventually freed when slavery is abolished, taking the name Edmond Albius. But he dies in poverty, his contribution largely ignored by the history books of his time, while the plantation owners grow fabulously rich on his discovery. The 19th century turns into the 20th, and the scale of the vanilla trade explodes. You see the rise of the great industrial food companies. Vanilla is no longer just for queens, it is for the masses. It finds its way into the first commercial ice creams, the first mass-produced chocolates, and eventually into a new, bubbling brown liquid called Coca-Cola. But there is a catch. Real vanilla is labour-intensive. Even today, every single bean you eat has been pollinated by hand, just as Edmond showed. It must be harvested by hand, cured for months by hand, and guarded by armed men in the fields of Madagascar to prevent vanilla rustling. Because it's so difficult to produce, you witness the birth of a shadow, vanillin. Scientists learn to synthesize the scent of vanilla from coal tar, from wood pulp, and from petroleum. Today, 99% of the vanilla flavour in the world never saw an orchid. It is a chemical ghost. Yet we still crave the real thing. You stand now on a hillside in Madagascar in the present day. You see farmers living in wooden huts, protecting their green gold with machetes. You see the price of vanilla swing wildly, sometimes becoming more expensive than silver by weight. You see the impact of cyclones and the volatility of global markets on the lives of people who have been growing this vine for generations. The journey of vanilla is a journey of contradictions. It began as a sacred orchid in a forbidden jungle, became the ultimate luxury of the Spanish Empire, was unlocked by the genius of an enslaved boy, and finally became the most boring flavour in your pantry. But the next time you hold a vanilla bean in your hand, look at it closely. Look at the dark, wrinkled skin and the thousands of tiny black seeds within. Remember the Totonac princess. Remember the stingless bees of Mexico. Remember Edmond Albius and his sliver of bamboo. You're holding 300 years of obsession, mystery, and human toil. You're holding a plant that refused to be tamed until a child showed the world how to speak its language. Vanilla isn't plain. It is a miracle that survived the greed of empires to find its way to you.